Did you know that the first person shooter called 13 is actually loosely based on the first 5 volumes of the 1984 Belgian graphic novel series, that of the same name? Well, it is. But, anyways, today we are talking about the 13 video game remake. It came out in 2020. This game actually initially came out in 2003, November 18th, 2003 to be precise. And what I will say is that I actually initially got this game in 2020 after it first launched, and this game was absolutely atrocious as a remake. And so I mean, because there was a lot of problems, with bugs, technical issues, and vice versa. So, this game was actually also initially released on the PlayStation 2, on Mac OS, GameCube, Xbox, and classic Mac OS as well, and Microsoft Windows. So basically, this game was actually really heavily criticized of the remake itself back in 2020. But however, with this game releasing back in 2003 for those multiple systems, this game was actually really somewhat heavily praised for a lot of people because it's a first-person shooter. A lot of people love first-person shooters, including myself. But I think what I'm really trying to do as best I can here to talk about this game, because this game it's still a great game in its own right. But it's still a little bit clunky in terms of its controls, especially if you're playing on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 via backwards compatibility. But however, this game really stood a certain test of time when it came to first-person shooters back in that time. And, opposite that of other FPSs, like Red Faction or like Black on PlayStation 2 or on the original Xbox and PS2. And so, this game was very interesting. I love the really core plot of this game. You're playing as a spy or an agent of some sort. He is voiced by David Duchovny. I don't think a lot of people knew that. But, that's the only thing I really enjoyed about this game in the remake or even the original game itself. But however, I think the remake really does not do a really good job with it does a good job with its presentation. It's just that with the remake, though, when it first initially came out, like I said, it had a lot of problems. But however, it was not a very good remake at first when it first initially launched, because this remake was actually helmed by someone who I did not recognize. I believe it was called Microids or something like that, and they did not do a very good job. A lot of people were really pissed off or really mad about the fact of how they really chastised the whole entire remake of 13, being that of the original game back in 2003. So, I mean, I'm not calling I'm not calling that company out. It's just that, this was just not a very good remake of sorts of a very special game of its time. And so that's why I believe that the remake, it's a lot better than it used to be. Because another developer, I don't know who picked it up, but another developer actually ended up, was able to bring back more of the nostalgia feel to, with the cell shading involved and better gunplay mechanics. And like I said, it is a lot better with the remake, with someone else doing the proper focus and proper balance of, fixing those AI bugs and technical issues and vice versa. So I do heavily give that company props for what they did. But overall, I still believe that the 13 remake, it's, like I said, it's still a good game. It still is. But I still have a really hard time to adjusting the fact that, when this game initially came out back in 2020, like I said, it was atrocious. It was buggy. I literally had to restart my game many times just because, there was like a certain type of, not really quest involved, but there was a progression bug as well, and I couldn't progress. And I was literally trying to figure out as to what was going on. And unbeknownst, it happened to be a bug, and I couldn't do anything. Now, since this game was actually ended up being re-released, like I said, under a new company, like I said, who I can't really know who they are, and I never heard of them. But however, that, they, like I said, they did a much better job with the remake. But however, I believe it's still a good FPS. And one thing I really want to put in here though too is that this game still brings back some really good nostalgia factor. That's where this game really falls under in terms of its cell shading systems, and amongst from, even though that it is a first-person shooter as I previously stated, but this game still represents that cell shading coordination along with its unique visual type of art style, and that's what I love about this game, other than it being an FPS too. It very much resembles to that, a little bit of that of Borderlands. But however, I think when it came to Borderlands, I think that I love the cell shading system in that game. It's fantastic. It's one of the best I've seen. But, 13, the video game, as you see here, it still represents that cell shading aspect and concept to it. And it's still, it's a lot better than it used to be, but it's just, it's supposed to be cartoony in a way. But like I say, I do believe that Bethesda, I do believe that Borderlands just does it better because, those games were more technical, advanced in terms of its art direction, its visualizations, and the concept of everything of where those Borderlands games were known to be. That because they were FPS looter shooter, and I love those games like crazy. I think they're fantastic. But I'm just veering off topic, maybe a little bit. But however, I think when it comes to the 13 remake, is that, like I said, it's still, I know I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry, but it's, like I said, it's still a good game. It's just that it just does not, it still just doesn't feel all that great still. Because, when you switch between weapons, it's a little clunky. It's not just because it's clunky. It's not very smooth. It's kind of jagged, and that's another thing that I've kind of noticed about it though too. But overall, I would still say that this game is still. I still believe it's, like I said, it is a lot better than it used to be, but it still has some of those representations of the game being somewhat a little janky and a little too confused to being able to how to control the mechanics in terms of its gunplay style or gunplay mechanics. And that's where I think that this game really just kind of somewhat falters in that regard. But like I said, overall, it's still a fun game. I really thoroughly enjoy it, but overall, it just doesn't work from what the original 2003 version did. But while, like I said, give this game a shot. I really do believe it's still a good game to play as of today in 2023. But however, it takes time to a game like this when it comes to remake of a game like this. It definitely takes a lot of time to get used to. Even that of the controls, or even that of it's more on the lines of its controls. It's the weapon wheel, like I said, it's clunky and all. But like I said, the game still works to its own type of visual type of fidelity. That's one thing I really thoroughly enjoy about this game, though, too, other than, talking about its cartoonish cell shading style to it, much like similar to that of Borderlands. But, this game still has that harkening back to the old school nostalgia factor, and I think that's where this game really hits as a whole. And I believe that, we need more games like this. I really do believe that I would love to see games not like 13 in a certain way, but I want to see games like this much better remade in their own different type of visual art style. Like we've had the Resident Evil 3 remake, we've had the Resident Evil 2 remake, we've had Resident Evil 4 remake. We have several remakes from the past few years, and we actually recently got the Dead Space remake earlier this year, and I love that game. So that's all I got to put in here. So if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. If you want to see more content like this, just let me know. Give me a holler. Leave any comments or questions, like I said, and I'll chat with you guys later. Have a good rest of your night.